Oh, there's the attending.
So, looks like,
Oh, Rich.
Oh, let me go on so you can.
okay, let me see if I can
Post
get
us.
folks in. Let's see, there's Leonie, okay.
Yeah,
So let's, yeah.
welcome.
Did you log in?
Yeah, I'm in. Welcome,
Hey,
everyone.
Leonie, you're gonna have to accept the, oh, you got it. Okay, thank you.
That Michael, that's our guest as well.
Okay, here we go. And there's Mr. Ma.
Welcome.
Hi,
Yeah,
Mr. Ma.
hi.
Hi, everyone. My name is Patricia Laria. I'm the Chair of Schools and Education. Welcome to our meeting tonight. I'm just going to introduce our committee members. Ann Hager, who's our Vice Chair of Schools. Mark Fitzgerald. Keen Berger. I know you. I see Ed Ma, our committee. He's zooming in, as well as Rich Patrapolo. And our speaker tonight, Leonie Haimson. Welcome, Leonie.
Thank you very much.
And we have
Love it.
you. Okay, and you're going to be, our agenda item tonight is a discussion on the class size working group and District 2 citywide data. I just want to go over some housekeeping, but I don't really see anyone. Just be respectful to everyone. Everyone knows that. And without further ado, I'll have Leonie start. I know that Emma is on her way. She said she'd be here in person. So welcome. Hi, Leonie. Can you hear us? Oh, Leonie, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you. Are you talking to me? I'm a little bit far away geographically, but I can hear you.
Okay.
I'm actually in Honduras right now.
Oh, sounds lovely.
Yeah, it's really nice. So I'm going to try to be coherent. So should I start or are we waiting?
Yes? Yes, please.
I can put up your proposal, or you can, your presentation, or you can.
Yeah, I think I'll put it up.
You got it, okay.
Okay, you guys see this, right?
Yep.
Okay, so thank you for inviting me, Patricia, and thanks to everyone for having me here. I was a longtime parent in the area in Greenwich Village, and so I really appreciate the support that CB2 has given my organization, Class Size Matters, over many years. And so I'm going to go over some district-specific data, but also where we are in terms of the new class size law. And if in any time you cannot hear me or I'm speaking too fast or something, please let me know. So one of the things we look at is the parent survey. As of the last DOE parent survey, smaller classes was the top priority for District 2 parents among 12 choices when asked what changes they would most like to see in their children's schools. And it's been the top priority for at least 8 years, except for 1 year in 21-22 when they were at number 2, again, behind stronger enrichment. And that may be because that year class sizes were very small as a result of the pandemic. But in any case, there was a new class size law that was passed in June 2022 overwhelmingly by the New York State Legislature and signed into law by Governor Hochul in September 2022, who gave DOE an extra year to comply. And what the law requires is that New York City public schools are supposed to cap all class sizes at no more than 20 students per class in grades K through 3, 23 students in 4 through 8, 25 students in high school classes by the end of the 2027-28 school year. So they have 5 years to phase in smaller classes. The only classes that are not supposed to comply to these caps are self-contained classes, which are already limited by law at much lower levels, pre-K classes, which are also limited by law at much lower levels, and phys ed and performing art group classes, which are now to be capped at 40 students per class instead of 50. which is the UFT contract. And each year, starting this fall, 20% of all classes are supposed to achieve these caps with an additional 20% every year. So next fall, it's supposed to be 40%, then 60%, and on. The city's supposed to prioritize schools with high levels of poverty to lower class size in first, which makes sense because those kids need the smaller classes the most and have been shown to benefit from smaller classes the most. We did make the first year caps for this year, primarily because of enrollment decline, but years 2 to 5 look unlikely. I'd say about 50% at this point that next year we'll make the caps. Years 3 to 5, I think very unlikely unless the DOE starts making some actual changes in policy planning and budgeting, which so far they have not done. So the chancellor actually appointed a class size working group in April of last year, and I was lucky enough to be appointed as one of the members. We did release a report last December, which I believe contains a lot of actionable, effective, and even quite a few affordable proposals on how the DOE can lower class size. One of them, and this is a very short summary of like a 50-page document, so I do hope that you might look at the entire document, but these are just some of the most important recommendations, I believe. The link is right there if you want to go to the actual report. One of the recommendations we made is stop co-locating schools and creating new schools without a new building to put them in, because that prevents the ability often of existing schools to lower class size. Every time you co-locate a school, it eats up classroom space by needing to replicate administrative and cluster and specialty rooms. And so we actually propose that whenever these proposals come up and voted on by the panel for educational policy, that there should be an actual analysis in the educational impact statement about what the likely impact would be on class size and whether would be enough space in the building after the co-location to lower class size in the existing schools. The one exception we made was District 75 schools, which continue to be co-located, which we think is really important. But in any case, the DOE continues to co-locate charter schools and other new schools in buildings this year without any analysis in the EIS or anywhere to ensure that that will not prevent the existing schools from reducing class sizes. Adjust enrollment at nearby schools to give all schools the space for smaller classes. This, I must say, is by far the most controversial recommendation we made because parents in New York City are used to having a fairly free hand within their district especially, but even sometimes outside of their district. And so there's some schools that are quote unquote popular and desirable, and they tend to be very overcrowded without the space to lower class size. But we believe that all schools should be good schools and all schools will be good schools if they have smaller classes. And often the preferences of parents are based upon a brand name or a stereotype that often does not turn out to be the case. And we could save billions of dollars and a lot of time by trying to more or less equalize enrollment across schools of the same grade level if they are nearby each other. We also put in guidelines in our recommendations that no kid should have to travel far from home. I think the guidelines that we suggested were no more than a half an hour walk for elementary school students, no more than half an hour by public transportation for middle school students, and no more than an hour by public transport for high school students. Obviously, there are many, many areas and districts across the city where practically all the schools are overcrowded, and we need to have a plan to accelerate and build more schools in those communities. There are also sub-districts where all the schools are overcrowded. And so I was actually the co-chair of the Capital Planning Committee. I'd say we have the most recommendations in that section of the report, a lot of them very detailed, also including recommendations on how to change the city planning process to make sure that schools are kept up with development. Right now, as you probably know, on the community board, there's often a lot of development and the number of schools and seats does not keep up with them. Strengthen the teacher pipeline. We're going to have to hire a lot more teachers. And so there are a lot of detailed recommendations on how to do that, including provide incentives for teachers, especially in the highest need schools, consider adding a separate budget line for class size reduction. Do not make principals use their fair student funding for that purpose. Why? Number one, principals are very used to having the flexibility with their fair student funding. They don't want to be told what to do with it. And they resent if you tell them that they have to lower class size with that money. And there are lots of other competing uses for that money, which are very important. Number two, we have seen that the pre-K, 3K and pre-K has a separate budget line in a school allocation memo budget line in the DOE budget. And they keep to very much smaller class sizes that are capped because of state law. And they do not violate those caps. And so what happens is if you have more than the necessary number of students, then you get more money to form another class. And if you really look at the school allocation memos over the years, the things that administrations really care about are not just pushed into fair student funding. They have a separate budget line, like the reading initiative of this mayor and this chancellor, to make sure that it actually happens. And since this is a state law and a lot of people think it's important to comply with state laws, we want to make sure that it actually happens. So what's the bad news? The good news is that our class sizes are smaller since COVID, but the bad news is that class sizes in most schools went up the last 2 years instead of down. And here is a slide that comes directly out of the DOE's class size report that they put out February 15th. You can see that for elementary and middle schools, this was the second year in a row that average class sizes went up. At high schools, it was the first year in a row, but this is exactly the wrong trend line that you do not want. But in terms of the classes that comply with the cap, in a way, I believe this administration was handed a really lucky card because of enrollment decline. 2 years ago, 42% of our classes already made the caps in K-12. And yet we see a declining number over the last 2 years. And so we're now somewhere about 39%. These are academic classes. Those are the only classes that we have comparisons for the year before. It might be as much as 40% now if you include all the class sizes, which they didn't used to report on in previous years, but it's certainly not over 40%, and it's moving in the wrong direction. So we also, one of the arguments that this administration has used against reducing class sizes is they say the highest need schools already have small enough classes. Therefore, we don't really need this law because it will take money away from the highest needs schools and students. But actually, we looked at something called the weighted need formula that the state education department has devised to help determine where the contract for excellent money is supposed to go. And it's based upon the number and the percentages of high need students, Ls, students with disabilities, students in poverty, and students at low achievement. And they take, it's a formula which you can read right there. You take each of the percentage values multiplied by the school enrollment, and the highest needs are supposed to receive the most contract for excellence funds. When you look at schools that way and divide them into the quartiles, you will see that the opposite is really true. So the higher a school's weighted need, the smaller the percentage of their classes that made the caps as of this fall. This is quartile 1. That's the highest need schools, highest weighted need schools, 27%, lowest weight need schools, 58%. One of the problems with the way the DOE did it, and it was also replicated wrongly in Chalkbeat and someplace else, is that when you only look at the highest need schools without looking at the number of students in those schools tend to be very, very small. They tend to be under-enrolled, very small, and actually they're more high need students in the other 3 quartiles than in the quartile 1. And in this fall, only 46 New York schools made all the class size caps. That's out of more than 1,500 schools, and not a single one was in quartile 1, which is the highest weighted need. And 36 were in the lowest weighted need. There were 3 that had no weighted need because they were new schools without any enrollment in them as of yet. So here's District 2 class size averages as of this fall. you can see that you're on, this is all the districts. Wait, is this school district, right? You can see all the school districts on here. You can see you're somewhat over on the right, which means higher than average citywide. And your class sizes in K through 3 went up from 22.7 to 23.3. Most all the schools across the city class sizes went up, though there are a few where they went down. And the number of K to 3 classes that made the cap also fell from 27. Oh, wait a second, let me go back here, because this red line is the cap, the 5-year cap in the law. So you can see you're way above the 25-year cap. And in terms of how many classes complied with the cap, it went down to about 22 from about 28 in K through 3. Now we're looking at 4 through 8. Class sizes went up a little bit in District 2 from 26.4 to 26.6 on average, which does not mean that there are not a lot of schools with class sizes far above that in those grades, but you can see you're also even a little bit further to the right, and most districts' average class sizes did go up in those grades, and 21% of your classes in those grades made the caps. Actually, the percent went up a tiny bit for those for classes in 4th through 8th grade. So you went from 20.1 to 21%. Not much difference, and still way below it needs to be. And here's high school went up from 23.5 to 25.5, and went from below the cap to above the cap. And this is the percentage went down from about 50% to 43%, making the 25 or lower in the high schools in District 2. So overcrowding is a huge problem citywide and in many schools in the district. About 26% of schools are overcrowded according to last year's Blue Book, which is the latest data that we have, and 27% of the schools in School District 2. This includes 34% of elementary schools citywide, but almost half of the elementary schools in District 2 were overcrowded at 48.6%. 27% of your middle schools, 15.7% of your high schools. And citywide, about 39% of students attend overutilized schools as of last year, and 35% of the students in District 2. These results roughly align with the DOE statement that approximately 500 schools do not currently have the space to comply with the class size caps with their current enrollment without lowering the cap and or building new schools nearby. And so in his testimony to the legislature, the budget hearings, which was no longer last week, but several weeks ago, Chancellor Banks admitted that while some schools need a few classrooms, some need many, and building new space will take years to complete and billions in new capital dollars. And yet, despite this, since the class size law was passed, the 5-year capital plan, both the existing 5-year capital plan and the new 5-year capital plan that's supposed to start next year, cuts about 50% of the new seats in them and about $2 billion out of new capacity. All identified projects in the new proposed 5-year capital plan that will be enacted as of June 30th are projects that were carried over from this year's capital plan with an undisclosed number of previously funded seats that were cut, that you very hard to figure out from the capital plan how many seats were altogether cut. And one of the things that's very disturbing and we believe illegal is that more than 70% of the seats funded in the new proposed 5-year plan are completely unidentified as to borough, district, sub-district, or grade level, which is the first capital plan I've looked at in 20 years, which does not identify where they plan to build new schools. There's a woman named Pat, now I've forgotten her last name, but Zadalis, who was head of school facilities more than 20 years ago, and she said she'd never seen a capital plan like that either. And here you can see the new capacity in the capital plans. The first 5 bars are the various iterations of the existing 5-year plan. So you can see that $1.8 billion were consecutively cut from new capacity over that time. And then another 2 billion was cut from the existing current cap 5-year plan compared to the proposed plan. And these are the number of school seats to be built. So the blue lines, the blue bars are new capacity seats. The green bars are the ones that are actually funded as opposed to only designed. So you can see that we started out, you know, in June 21 with 53,000 seats, more than now we're 22,000, whatever. A lot of seats cut. And these is more detail that I will provide you with these slides you can look at in your leisure. But these are, according to the current plan and the next 5-year plan, how many seats are going to be created over the next 8 years. And what's really pretty scary is that 2027 is the year by which all schools are supposed to be compliant. And you can see there's a radically diminishing number of new seats that will be built according to the SEA's own estimate by that point. And then this is a longer term look at it from 2024 to 2032 by school district. You can see right over here is District 2. So there's seats in progress that have 445 according to the current cap 5-year plan. And then you're supposed to get more than 1,000, but it won't be done until sometime in the second 5-year plan. And then we just looked at this. We thought this was interesting. John Liu, was the prime sponsor of the class size law in the legislature. Apparently the DOE or the city's been asking for more bonding authority for more of their capital expenses. And John Liu asked, is that for schools or prisons? And Liu said he thought that was a softball question, but Adams refused to answer. But in any case, you can see a radically declining percentage of our overall city 10-year capital strategy funding going to education. So that would also include CUNY as well as public schools. But you can see there's been a sharp decline. And part of that may be because of enrollment decline, but it's, you know, given the class size law, it's really unacceptable. So here's where I go into more detail about why the lack of transparency is, we believe, illegal. It doesn't just say, right now, we're not ready to tell you where those seats are going to be. It actually says that projects will be officially listed in the plan following the identification of a site and the commencement of the school facilities design process. And this is implying that they will never identify where schools will be built until they're already in the process. They've already bought the site and are designing it. This completely leaves the public out of the process, including parents, CECs, community boards, et cetera, out of the potential siting of school and their input as to where new schools are needing. I'm sure you know that in District 2, but in many other places as well, it's often the parents and the local elected officials that cry out and say, we have a need for a school, and then go identify a potential site or potential development. So according to the SCA at this point, that will never be able to happen again. And there are 2 laws in which I think it violates. One is this law, which I won't read out, but it says you're supposed to give a list of prioritized projects. The class size law is even more specific. It says the DOE must submit an annual plan for school construction to show how many classrooms will be added each year and in which schools and districts to achieve the class size targets. Since the class size law was passed, they've become less transparent and are building fewer new schools. And we believe it also violates a memorandum of understanding with the City Council. So where are we now? This is also very detailed, but there were 2 laws that were passed in 2018 because of our advocacy and the advocacy of other parent groups that wanted more transparency in the capital plan, so that the number of seats that were planned would have to be disaggregated, actually by grade level, which they do not do now. They mush together elementary and middle schools and then IS and high schools, and more than anything else, to show what their seats needs estimates were based upon, because we could never replicate their estimates, even looking at the supposed data sources they use, which have to do with enrollment trends and housing starts. And so we asked for specific data to be provided, and we asked for a specific detailed methodology to be provided, and they did neither one. Instead, they took out entirely the separate column that said seats needed as opposed to seats funded. So they used to have two different ones. Now they only have seats needed funded, which they say is because all the seats needed are funded, which we know is complete BS. So they're not complying with that law. The council had this task force, which put together a number of proposals, including this one, that there should be a formal task force to look at all empty lots, whether privately owned lots or city-owned lots, and to analyze them to see if that they were appropriate to build schools. Because in the past, there have often been money in the capital plans in certain districts, and then the DOE and the SEH just simply says there's no space to build those schools. And nobody really believes that. So the task force was created. It met only twice. The report was 2 pages long, which I foiled along with a spreadsheet. It got no input from the city council or from the parent members on the task force, including Shino, who I'm sure you know. And it ruled out hundreds of city-owned sites for reasons that we couldn't understand on the spreadsheet, and never even reported on the suitability of over 22,000 privately owned sites. So we've been pushing the council and the DOE in the resolution, in fact, that I think I sent you folks, to reconvene that task force and actually look at this issue with more granularity, accuracy, and more public input. And so this is the issue about enrollment, which again is very, very controversial among some parents. We believe that more evenly adjusting enrollment across schools would not only allow the very overcrowded schools to lower class size, but also make sure that students in those schools could eat lunch at a reasonable time, rather than early in the morning or late in the afternoon. Sometimes in overcrowded schools, kids don't even have, in elementary schools, kids don't get time in the gym or in playgrounds. And also it would benefit the underutilized schools, because now they tend to have very constrained budgets and cannot provide the full level of programs and services and enrichment courses that students really need for a sound basic education. And in an October 12th Brooklyn Town Hall meeting, actually this was brought up by an elementary school child who was looking at middle schools, and she said it's not fair that some schools get all the students and therefore have a big budgets and can keep their teachers, whereas other schools have very small budgets and can't keep their teachers. And the deputy chancellor at that point said, this is the reality. If the school gets too small, you can't afford programs, PSAL, enrichment, debate clubs, etc. We've got too many schools that have gotten below critical mass. And yet more recently at a different town hall meeting, Weisberg said to cap any school at lower levels in order to lower class size would be anti-parent and anti-family. So as you probably know, we're also facing radical plans to cut DOE's budget, which would necessarily mean cuts to school budgets. We've already seen 2 years of school budget cuts. That's why class sizes went up in most schools for the last 2 years. Recently, about 600 schools received mid-year adjustments based upon lower enrollment than projected. The mayor is cutting more than $500 million from the DOE budget this fiscal year, including the elimination of vacant non-classroom positions, but we actually believe he's cutting a lot of positions in schools that were never filled because they had freezes. And they plan additional budget cuts of about $500 million for each of the next 4 years. And it would be simply impossible to lower class size with these level of budget cuts. In fact, class sizes would go up. We looked at the various budget allocation memos, the school allocation memos. There's only one among all the school allocation memos this year that provides any funding for smaller classes, and that's schools with gifted classes. That if they don't have enough, if they have lower than 18 students per class, then they're getting extra money to keep those classes existing at lower than 18 kids a class. And probably in most cases, those are the kids who need smaller classes the least. So how many teachers would we need? The estimates range from 10,000 to 12,000 by DOE to 17,000 by IBO. However, the DOE's already shrunk the K-12 teaching force by 4,000 since 2019, making it even more challenging to build up the number of teachers that we need. And their financial plan that was just released in January projects another loss of nearly 3,000 full-time teachers over the next 2 years. So again, it looks like if they put these plans into action, we will not get smaller classes. So this is the full-time K-12 teachers over the last 5 years. You can see the dramatic decline. This is from the January financial plan, another loss of almost 3,000 teachers over the next 2 years. And yet we've gotten $1.3 billion in additional annual support to our schools as a result of this campaign for fiscal equity settlement. So this was a court case that occurred over 20 years ago, which said New York City schools needed more money, in part to lower class size, because it was the decision of the state's highest court, the Court of Appeals, that New York City students were denied their constitutional right under the state constitution, in part because their class sizes were too large. So this is the third year of this roll-in and $1.3 million, which is why John Liu and others say, we got the money to lower class size, we just didn't use it appropriately. But there are other sources of funding available and possible to comply with the class size law. The IBO estimates it would cost another $214 million starting in 2026. So they assume fiscal year 2026, they assume that there's enough money in the budget for next year. I'm not sure that's true, but anyway, $427 million, the following another $427 million. You may have heard that IBO and now the City Council expects that the upcoming budget will have a $3.3 billion surplus. We have a rainy day fund of $2 billion, and there are some other revenue and savings options for the city and for DOE. There's a couple in particular that I want to share with you that would need to be done by the state legislature, and they're actually bills that have been introduced to do this. We're paying nearly $3 billion that comes straight out of the DOE budget for charter schools, and that's expected to go up over the next 4 years, according to the mayor himself. And we are the only district in the state and entire nation that does not get a penny from the state in charter transition aid, which is supposed to reimburse districts for part of the cost to their budgets, school budgets of charter school expansion. We've lost out on about $2.6 billion between 2011 and 2022 in charter transition aid, and nearly $100 million this year. Again, yeah, we're the only district in the state that doesn't receive this aid. And then there's something called, we're the only district in the state and the nation that has to pay for charter school rent. And the savings, if we were exempted from having to pay charter school rent, that would bring in another $100 million last year. And that's an amount that's increasing rapidly each year. Is that a question?
No.
Okay. And then something which we found out being part of the class size working group, which is not generally known, even by our state legislators, even by the Citizens Budget Commission, not even by the IBO when I asked them about it, was that we are no longer getting 50% reimbursement from the state for new school construction as we do for all other capital costs. We are only getting about 25% because of some cost cap. And I've been desperately trying to find out more about this and if the cost cap can be raised. So far, I haven't been that successful, but that could literally mean billions of dollars in additional funds. These are more revenue proposals, which you can find on my website if you're interested, but these are mostly the things that the IBO is already determined could be raised billions of dollars in city revenue. So what can you do? You have a resolution that we drafted that has been passed by several other CECs and community boards in Manhattan that urges the DOE to actually comply with the law and adopt some of the proposals of the class size working group. There's a city education budget hearing starting March 18th. You can testify remotely, in person, or even just send in written testimony. And all, if you pass the resolution or if you don't pass the resolution. If you pass the resolution, you can send in the resolution. If you don't, as individuals or whatever, you can just say, whatever you want about this issue. Sign up for our newsletter to be kept up to date. Comes out about once a week or once every 2 weeks. You can email us with questions, and of course you can answer questions. And if you have any questions now, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Leonie. That was a very extensive, detailed, passion-driven presentation. I know that.
Yeah, probably more than you wanted, but
Thank you. It's more than my committee, any questions for her?
I have none. I mean, it was all there. It's all there.
Rich has a question.
Well, there, in the resolution, I think we're missing the specifics for District 2.
Right.
really,
yeah.
because I thought I put them in.
No,
No.
There was one version which I shared online, but there was another version that I sent to Pat that had all the District 2 data in it. No, Pat, you didn't get that?
I think there is one that came through that has the District 2.
You did yesterday? Did you send?
If you send it to me,
Send it
put it
I
up.
sent it about a week ago. I
Oh.
can resend it, as soon as I get off this call, or Michael Rance, who's my associate, who's sitting there somewhere behind his screen.
Yeah.
Do you have the CB2 that you could quickly
You saw it,
email?
Ann?
Maybe not. I'm looking at the one. I thought one of them had it.
Because the one you sent me initially was the one I circulated, but I haven't.
Oh, the stats aren't there.
Yeah.
If somebody could send it to me, I can put it right up on the,
Yeah, let me just send it, please. Resend it and. check
I
it
should
out.
resend it? Okay. Michael, do you have it handy or should I look for it?
I'll look for it as well. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll both look for it. If you have any other questions, I can.
so just put my email in the chat. If you can find it, send it to that, then I can.
I have it. I have it right here. So this has whereas it's District 2, the percentage of classes.
Send that to me.
Yeah, I'll email it.
Put it up on the Google Doc.
Okay, good.
Oh, thank you.
The numbers are there?
The numbers are there? Because the one that you
It has, this one has the District 2 numbers plugged in.
Okay.
So it has like, whereas I'm trying to find the one I was looking at.
That's whereas 10.
It's not numbered. They're not, but it has in District 2, the percentage of classes in grade K-3 in compliance with the caps fell from 27.7.
Or did she
Yeah, I'm
share
gonna-
it with you?
I'm gonna send it. I got it from, let me see who I got it from originally. I got it from Leonie, and it has CB2 schools and Patricia and
What was the date?
Janine on it. I'm gonna,
All right. could you-
March 3rd.
March 3rd.
Yeah, let me just forward to this. Hold on.
All right. Anybody else have questions?
So yeah, Rich, that should be the only difference.
I
It's
think
just
so, yeah.
the numbers are missing from the one that we had. And
Yeah.
I'm sending it right now.
we'll put them in, just send me the numbers, just plug them into this.
It's already, it's there. I just sent it to you.
All right, all right.
Couple.
Right, all right.
One.
But does anybody else, could you see who has the question and I'll look for it?
All right.
Or
Vice Chair?
Ann, Vice Chair, could you take
Are there any other
questions?
questions?
Are there any other questions?
Yeah.
I can, do you want me to fill, time? I have like 20 I could ask. Do
Oh.
you want me to fill time? Okay, go.
Raised,
Oh, the person.
Not full time, but
Yeah, but do you guys have access to?
Yeah, I'll elevate that person. But for me, take a public question.
please take,
yeah, let's take a public question.
Motoko? Hi. You're able-
Hello. Oh, hello.
Hi.
Oh, hi. I'm sorry. Sorry. Oh, okay. Hi. Yes. Thank you so much for the presentation. I'm sorry I missed the first half. But there were a lot of information that I never knew. So thank you. And if there is a video, then I would like to watch it later too. But I am a parent of District 2 students, two of them. One of them is 7th grade. And actually, a lot of parents are very worried about this law because District 2 already has a very bad, high school admission outcome for public schools. Because I guess, all the District 2 schools suddenly started to open to the citywide in 2020, and a lot of citywide kids are applying to schools in District 2, but then Queens and Brooklyn schools have their own district priorities or borough priorities, and so a lot of our kids don't even get into the schools that we write, like 12 choices that we write. And if the class size law goes into effect, then what's going to happen to our kids, right? So we are really, really, even though smaller class size is great, but then we are really worried that a lot of kids are just going to be displaced. And I was wondering if there is anything that that how that can be avoided, especially for older kids. I think it's really great. The smaller class size is probably really, really great for smaller, younger kids. But for high school, especially like the schools that are very popular and excelling, I don't know if now is a good time. And so I was wondering if you have any thought about that.
Thank
Well,
you. Yes,
sorry.
please.
Should I speak? Yeah.
Yes, Leonie, yes.
Yeah, so there is an exemption in the law that the negotiation between the DOE, the UFT, and the CSA, the Principals Union, can give exemptions to certain overcrowded popular schools as long as there's a plan to build in the capital plan to build extensions of those schools and expand them nearby. So there is this exemption in the law to be used possibly for very overcrowded and popular schools.
I see.
More
Thank
broadly, as I said, we suggested that there be geographical limits on this. But you're right that many of the most popular schools are very overcrowded, and in order to comply with the law, another option that we put in as a possibility is to go on double or triple sessions, which already some popular schools do. And so what that does is it means that some kids come in earlier, some kids come in later in the afternoon. What we say is all those decisions about reconfiguring a school in order to adopt overlapping sessions or shifts should be done with the full consultation of the school community, including the SLT. And that the capping of schools, if it's a zone school in particular, should be done with the consulting the CEC, which is the way that you're supposed to do it by law. But yeah, no, it is a controversial issue because a lot of parents want their kids to go to a certain subset of schools, which are very popular and overcrowded, and it's all gotten worse for District 2 since they took away district preference.
Thank you. Motoko, did that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much. I'd like to make a comment on that. I personally, my daughter is going to high school next year, and I feel like, particularly in high school, this is when students will greatly benefit from smaller class sizes. I mean, for me, I looked for a school that was smaller in general. With a smaller class size, that would be great for me. I'm sure big crowded schools work for some students, but I think the evidence overall tells us that students benefit from smaller class sizes. And I know certainly my child would.
There is research to show that that students of all ages benefit from smaller classes in terms of higher achievement, higher graduation rates, you know, more involvement and engagement in the learning process. So even in the best of schools with the highest achieving kids, kids do better with smaller classes.
I mean, if huge overcrowded schools were great, then the private schools would all be huge and overcrowded. There's a reason, you know, that they're not. I want to uplift a comment in the chat. Leonie, it's a request. Are you able to share your contact info? My name is Ella, and I am a Eugene Lang New School student trying to get important contact in CB2 for possible future interview projects about community needs.
Yeah, I have a few emails. I'll put several of them in there so you can see. I'm always open to talking to people about this stuff if you'd like me to come.
Great. Thank you, Nellie.
Can I add one other thing as a response to what Otoko's question was? One of the things that I've seen as they removed the district priority is that some of the parents didn't necessarily get into the schools that had sort of the blue ribbon names, the ones that used to be sort of the prize schools. But part of that has been then an expansion of looking at some other schools that had turned out to be sort of hidden gems, as they're called in these high school groups, these parent high school groups. The hidden gems, it turns out there's a lot of amazing teaching going on in other schools that are not Stuyvesant lab. There are a lot of schools that are out there that actually have a lot of quality teaching in them. And maybe it's not a bad thing that we're being pushed to look at different schools and think about sort of spreading around the resources and expanding so that everybody can get into a great school.
Well, a great school that's a great fit.
Right.
I mean, honestly, my feeling and my strategy at the elementary and at the middle school level, and even at the high school level, was that even if I had, you know, a specialized high school type student, why would I send them into a giant pool of students that are just as driven, just as smart? My kid's not going to shine in an environment with everybody's the same. I would rather send them to one of these gems and let them really shine.
Yeah, and I think
You know,
both of us ended up with a child at the same middle school.
We
It
did.
happens to be one of those gems where everybody got in that wanted to get in, but it wasn't the school. And it turns out our friends who got into one of those blue ribbons type schools actually are not as happy as we are,
happy.
because they found that with a more diverse set of students, the teaching actually isn't up to par.
Yeah.
So
These are also considerations. I mean, I think as parents, as moms, we want our kids to be places in environments that they're happy, that they're going to be nurtured, and that their talents are going to be able to really grow. And that's not always, you know, a giant
rat race.
rat race. It's not, these are kids.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I had a woman working for me who went to Stuyvesant and said that it was not until she went to a small college and had small classes that she really did understand what true learning was all about. So that's just one example. There's another example of a parent who testified at the recent class size hearings, because there were hearings at the city council level, in District 20, which has more overcrowded schools than in Brooklyn than any other district. And she said that during COVID, some kids were actually transferred to other schools because there wasn't room for them to have social distancing. I didn't know that they were involuntarily transferred to other elementary schools temporarily, and these were considered less desirable schools. And then after COVID was over, those parents did not want to transfer their kids back because they realized that these schools, which did not have a stellar reputation based on their brand, were actually much more nurturing and which were able to provide their kids with a much better education than at the crowded popular school that they had originally been attending. And so often, and this is understandable, and I don't blame any parent for thinking this way, but often we stereotype schools based on their test scores. And more than anything else, test scores are based on demography. And in District 2, we have the luxury of having a lot of kids from upper middle class families who tend to do well. And if they're not doing well, they get tutors, et cetera. And then you only look at a school by the test scores. And I think that that's something that we have to get away from eventually. I think actually test scores will go up in the schools with smaller classes. I mean, that's what the research shows as well. But you should not stereotype a school by test scores alone.
I agree with that, Lainey. I believe no, you don't have a question?
I can,
If you don't have one.
If you don't have,
or
that's
Janine,
fine.
Janine has.
Oh, Janine Harley has joined us for the chair.
I missed the first few slides, but I was just wondering, obviously you are leading the charge on this and you have been leading the charge. At the city and state level, who is supporting reducing class size? The controller, the public advocate, which council members at the state level? Who are your allies?
Yeah, this was a big push at the state level, primarily by Senator John Liu and Senator Robert Jackson. And we weren't sure we were going to get the bill through at all because Assemblymember Benedetto was not gung-ho on it, and he's the head of the Assembly Education Committee. But with not from me, but from other influential individuals and groups, Benedetto was convinced, and it passed, and Hochul signed it into law. So there's a lot of support, I would say, in the legislature and at the city council level. Rita Jackson, I've forgotten her last name.
Rita Joseph?
Yeah, Rita Joseph led the class size hearings last week. She's a former teacher. She feels passionately about this. The former education chairs were both teachers and felt passionately about it. I think there's a lot of support. The public advocate came to the rally before the hearings talking about the importance of class size. So I think there is quite a bit of support among many elected officials. However, I would be lying if I didn't say there is a very strong vocal minority of parents in certain districts whose elected officials are wavering. The one that really stood out was Linda Lee, who's, I think, a Queens council member at the last hearing. So I don't know, I think we have a very strong base of support. I'm always a worrywart, and I know that there is this group of parents that want to get the law repealed or amended, radically amended. First, that it should only be for K through 3, then it should be for 10 years, that they should phase it in, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The UFT tells me I shouldn't be so worried, but I am worried that this particular group of parents who do dominate CEC2 are very loud, are very vocal, and very well organized. And so I am not complacent at all that we may not see amendments to the law. I think we do have to fight to keep it strong and as it is. But John Liu so far has been very, very, very vehement, as has Senator Robert Jackson, who was the main plaintiff in the original CFE lawsuit. So knock on wood.
So the way we can help is pass this resolution.
Yes.
Testify as, send our testimony and testify at the next hearing, and also individually do so. Is there another way?
And send the resolution to all your local elected officials, because they need to have their backs firmed up, especially since CEC2, they were very pro class size reduction and supported the original law, but they are no longer supportive at all. They haven't passed a resolution against it, but I haven't asked them to pass our resolution because I know they're not going to support it, because the majority of people on that CEC are not supportive. So I think especially in School District 2, it's really important that we speak out on this and tell our local elected officials that this is really important. I am speaking to CB1 tomorrow night. So already this community boards in East Harlem and Central Harlem have passed the resolution as well. So I think we're okay on the uptown side. The downtown side of Manhattan is not as strong.
And where do you stand with CB 3, 4?
I've
5,
reached out to
6?
CB3 because they've always been supportive, like more than probably any community board, but Renee Kinsella seems to be on the fence. I don't know. I've emailed her twice now. She asked me what CEC2 was doing. I told her very frankly that they were not going to support it. Layla, who I'm very close to, was on the education committee or chair of that education committee. Now she's at the City Club. She encouraged me to reach out to Renee Kinsella, but I don't know where they are at this point.
Okay.
And then there are a few others that I have not reached out to yet. So, but I think there are 3 in Manhattan that have, and hopefully you guys and hopefully CB1 will see.
Okay.
You want me to put the resolution up or not necessary?
No, I don't have it.
Let's talk about it in business session, but this,
Okay, leave it.
yeah, I
now.
think I sent it to Rich.
Yeah, we all have it now.
Yeah, everyone has it now. Yeah, I think has it. Leonie, in the therefore be it resolved, we are asking for involvement of the community education councils and citywide councils be part of the large scale development and rezoning. I thought they had that role on CEC. Couldn't they talk about rezoning or whenever a school comes online or the line changes?
Yeah, but I'm talking about how schools have to be built along with those large scale developments. So in other words, when there's a proposal to, use Euler for rezonings of housing and other large scale developments that are going to generate potentially a lot of students, they should be asked for advisory input as well as community boards. It seems to me because they are directly, and I think that you guys, there are a lot of community boards that work very closely with their CECs, but there are others that do not. And the CECs are sometimes don't even know when these proposals are going through. So I just think that maximum public participation is important when it comes to the need for schools, and as many community members as you can involve, the better off we'll be. And as I said, I have a lot of more detailed recommendations about the city planning process, which I think is highly flawed and needs correction. For one thing, the class size standards in the manual are the old class size standards, not the new class size standards. So they haven't even changed that. Plus, there's a lot of other problems I'm sure that you're aware of about how schools get built, and even when the SCA agrees they should be built, and they can come later can say, no, I don't think we want to pay for it. And, and even when schools are built, often it's years after when the development's already built. And I just think that there needs to be real consideration for schools in a different way than is currently in the way that we do city planning.
Thank you, Lainey. Are there any other questions for Lainey before we go into business session from our committee members? Any attendees have questions or need clarification on anything? Being none.
I want to thank her.
Oh, okay.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Well, thank you for having me, and I'll send the PowerPoint to Pat so you can take a look at it if you feel like it.
Okay, thank you. Yes.
And thank you for your partnership over many, many years now. I don't know that you were all here way back when, but some of you were.
Yes.
I know Janine was.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks again. Have a good evening. Bye.
Thank you. Bye, Leonie.
Bye. Okay, we are now I see no other questions, so I'm going to start business session. Thank you. In business session, attendees cannot ask questions. You can stay and observe. It's just up to the committee now to discuss the solution and vote. I'm going to share, I put in that information in the one that I linked.
Yeah. So
I had the one that came through, but whenever you want to do this.
She just plugged it into the version.
I can share it on,
so we're discussing a resolution to support the implementation of the class size bill.
right.
What else do we? need to say?
I have changed my position. I am now very much in support of.
Okay.
Why weren't you? Why weren't you?
That was the conversation. She wasn't against class size, shrinking class size. It was the length of the resolution.
Yeah, but I mean,
We have.
Okay,
There's so much information about why it's important.
yeah, I know.
I mean, the charter school part, for me, that's a big thing to point out, that they're just living rent free. We could be making lots of money for public schools. From charter schools. They're not paying the rent.
We're paying, not only that, we're paying their rent in other spaces.
Yes.
It's not just that they're not renting our public school spaces and taking public school spaces, it's that we're paying their rent.
On the additional physical spaces.
Yes. So they'll rent a private space and the city, we pay.
Is it pursuing? Like, is that a law?
And Governor Cuomo,
Don't.
did that. Yeah, it was.
Is it a law or is it a?
Because, well, remember, Mayor de Blasio tried
I mean, I
to
can't
end
remember exactly how she.
co-location,
But it's.
and result was this,
DOE's
they got more from the settlement than they got,
Charter.
than they currently had from the school they were co-locating with. Anyway, this is a long history, but that's what it goes back to.
Bloomberg, though, that kind of,
Bloomberg obviously set
Yeah.
the train in motion, but it was de Blasio who was trying to pull it back. And our friend
Yes.
Eva, not our friend Eva, but our friend
Yes.
Eva Moskowitz was very successful in lobbying the governor in the budget process, in effect saying that that the state budget had to allow for that. I'm sorry to interrupt.
yeah, they get, wow, they get so much money.
Yeah.
I can't even get to the depths of it. So, yeah, for me, that was the big thing. They should pay their due. So,
Well, I mean, I think that that's not for me the thing. I think it would make the resolution more anti-charter school thing, we're in trouble. But I think just really pushing the class size thing, which is what the resolution does.
yeah, for sure, that's just what resonated with me. And if it wasn't in there, I wouldn't have seen it.
And I'm talking strategy, and I think
Yeah.
strategy is.
So I put the therefore be it resolved up on the screen for everybody to see. And it was emailed to everyone also.
Oh, it's not even in there. No, it's not in
Yeah, I
there.
was just searching it.
Yeah, we're urging that the mayor and the chancellor refrain from cutting budgets and capital plan, increase funding for, I mean, you all have it, but that, do you want me to? Yeah,
Just read that
No,
there.
that's okay.
and then demand that DOE and school construction authority propose capital plan where new schools are needed, where there will be built. CB2 demands DOE will not propose any changes in school utilization without an analysis in the educational impact statement. CB2 recommends city planning should include CECs as well as citywide council within the advisory process when large-scale developments or rezonings are proposed. CB2 urges the mayor and chancellor to immediately adopt the class size working group's proposal so that New York City students can benefit from the proposed personalized feedback necessary for them to have a better chance to learn. And the last one, should the mayor and the chancellor fail to take these necessary steps, CB2 urges the state education department to mandate the creation and prompt implementation of an effective class size reduction plan as soon as possible. But that's what we're pushing.
What would be the arguments against reducing classes?
That's what the speaker was talking about, how they don't want to reduce the number of seats at the most popular schools.
At the high demand.
Oh.
They don't want to reduce.
Oh, okay.
But there's also the budget. So the mayor's issue is not that as much as it is budget. It costs a lot of money to build new schools and to hire new teachers.
So that one I kind of understand, but I don't think a parents is advocating for that. Yeah, okay, that makes a lot of sense. Sorry.
Yeah. So that's what we're talking about. So, I mean, if there are any other.
I'm a yes.
So let's vote. So are we all in favor? Can we have an executive summary to address Keen's concern?
No.
Can't do it.
No, what does that mean?
That it's too long?
I don't want an
No,
executive summary.
I don't,
No, Janine, no, Janine.
Okay, I was just thinking at the very beginning, like before you flip through all the pages, you know what the ask is.
Right, but I think at this point, our strategy is to pass this.
okay, yeah, and to back
Kind
end.
of, we could say that we thought about it. Yeah, we didn't just pass it.
Do you think we're gonna get pushed back at the full board, Janine?
I mean, we don't worry about that.
I don't think so. I was more just thinking politically, but
Okay,
it's a class size matters version, and I think it's good to have that.
okay.
Could I just
Mark, go ahead.
ask a question? What is the name of the resolution? Because if you don't have an executive summary, you don't want to go down that road, and I completely respect that, but you can name it the resolution to implement the class size reduction, just like they say the.
Resolution urging DOE to implement the proposals of the class size working group.
There you go.
comply with the new
There you go.
Class size law.
It's just like they talk about, when they name statutes, they name them for let's make sure that justice and liberty are
What
served.
do we call it?
Yeah, it's a long name, but it's a good one. Yeah.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, no, it's perfect. So that when it shows up on the agenda,
Okay,
Yes.
folks who are not going to read 30 pages will.
okay.
All right, and in the emails that go to electeds, that can be the subject matter.
That's what I'm thinking.
Sure that,
I mean, it's only
Top line.
4.5 pages anyway.
it's not that long.
Yeah, it's not.
I mean, considering that what we just watched, the amount of information, that's why this is important.
Right. And there is so much that's actually not even in here.
Oh, come on, Nora, don't do that.
All right, so I'm gonna ask.
I say we expand it.
Everyone in favor, and everyone in favor, it's a yay. Can I hear that? Aye.
Aye.
Any no's? Abstention? Recusal? So it passes
Matt, do
unanimously.
you want a roll call?
I would like a very badly.
Sorry for laughing so hard. I wanted it to be a little bit longer. No, just kidding.
No.
I'm just kidding. No, I actually did.
Reading the rest of it was long enough.
No, when I read through it, I thought her point 22, where she says they provided a bunch of actionable and effective policies in point 22.
Uh-huh.
Then I thought, well, I'm not sure that they are all that. I mean, it's kind of so they point that out, but then in the therefores be it resolved, it doesn't really say specifically which of those ideas they want pushed,
It's in the report, which is like 50 pages.
I know. That's all. It just,
Yeah.
good. I just thought 22 should say check the report. That's all I'm.
So is that
Oh, we
a
should
friendly
You've done a lot of good work.
You
You
want me
always,
to check the
illustrated
no.
report? Should we put something like that in there?
No,
Make
I
more
don't think so.
I think we should, if we're just bring it up.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it up front. Why not put that in there?
Yeah.
They've done good work.
At the top and then.
Yeah, I mean, you want people to look through because what we just saw was really convincing and compelling.
Yeah, I mean, they've been at this a long time. They have thought about this a lot. They have done all the foil stuff. They have, I mean, they have such credibility and that it is worth people spending some time, I think.
All right. Okay, accepted. And
All right.
you're putting it in, Mar? All right. And then we have our vote. Okay, so I'm gonna adjourn this meeting unless we have new business and anyone. We're good? So I want to,
Thanks, guys.
thank you.
Thank you.
I love these short meetings.
Yeah.
Yes,
So-
well done.
Great. So everybody have to be on schools.
Thanks for coming.
And that phone goes, oh, this is okay.
Oh.
So we're out.
Yeah.